In May of 1994, Cleashindra Hall was ready to graduate from high school and had big plans for herself. She was an honor student and had been selected to give a speech at her graduation, which was just a few weeks away. Cleashindra, who often went by Clea, had been planning to leave her hometown of Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and attend Tennessee State University, with her ultimate goal to become a pediatrician. Clea had an after-school job working with a local doctor in Pine Bluff. On May 9th, 1994, she was seen going to work. Typically around 8:00 p.m., Clea would call her parents for a ride home. Clea did call her mom that night around 8 p.m. as usual, telling her she wasn't quite ready and would be calling her back soon for a ride, probably closer to 8:30. Clea's mom fell asleep while waiting for the call and woke back up around 1 a.m. Clea was not home, not at the doctor's office, and she was never seen or heard from again. Where is Clea Hall?
Cleashindra Hall had a big heart and an even bigger love for children.
She's always played with somebody's children. I mean, at church, she worked in the nursery.
At only 18 years old, Clea, as her family nicknamed her, had a big plan. Her mother, Laurel, explains.
She was in the Beta Club, President Achievement Awards. She was a good student.
And she had dreams, and back then, that she wanted
to be a pediatrician.
Clea was weeks away from finishing high school.
Excited about graduating. She was going to do an internship in Boston for the summer, and then she was going to go to Tennessee State.
But all those dreams faded away. Cleashindra Hall vanished May 9th, 1994.
We have not yet, in all these years, a trace.
Pine Bluff Deputy Police Chief Terry Hobson has been involved in the case on and off for 25 years.
I wish that we could find out what happened to her, and we will continue.
Hello, and welcome to the Where Are They podcast bonus episode. Today's episode covers the case of Cleashindra Hall. She typically went by Clea, so that's what I'm going to refer to her as here. This case takes us back to 1994, so we are going back a ways, 28 years actually. But this is the type of case they make movies about, and yet I bet the majority of people out there have not even heard of Clea Hall. Clea was born March 30th, 1976, to parents Willie and Laurel Hall. She was super bright, a great student, loved playing in the marching band, and was close to her family, which included her parents and 3 younger brothers. In 1994, Clea was so close to graduating and already had her summer internship set up in Boston. She was attending Watson Chapel High School. After graduation and completing her internship, she was planning to head to Tennessee State University, where she would pursue her dream to become a doctor. Since Clea also loved kids and loved helping people, her career choice of becoming a pediatrician seemed perfect for her. Clea seemed to have everything going for her. The weekend of May 6th, 1994, Clea attended her senior prom. She spent Sunday, May 8th, celebrating Mother's Day with her family. Monday, May 9th, 1994, was back to business as normal. Clea went to school, and because she was a senior, she was allowed to leave early to go to a job, which is what she did on this day. Her mom picked her up from school and they drove over to Dr. Amos's house. However, no one was home even though they had been expecting her, which was a little bit unusual. But Clea and her mom just went ahead and drove back home, and Clea ended up taking a nap until about 4:30 p.m. when Dr. Amos called to say that he was now ready for her to come over. Laurel dropped Clea off around 5 o'clock p.m. that night. Dr. Amos had his office inside his house in Pine Bluff, and Clea would do some administrative tasks for him. Dr. Amos wasn't a medical doctor. He was actually running a nonprofit or some type of charitable organization in which he distributed grants or financial resources to in-home daycares. Clea usually finished up around 8 o'clock p.m. and would call her mom for a ride. On this particular day, Clea did just that. But she wasn't quite ready to come home yet at 8 o'clock, and she told her mom that she would probably be ready closer to 8:30, but she would give her a call to confirm. Laurel hung up the phone and proceeded to doze off on the couch while waiting for Clea's call back. Her husband and Clea's father, Willie, arrived home around 12:45 a.m. and noticed Laurel sleeping on the couch. He woke her up, and together they realized that Clea had not come home. Laurel immediately called Dr. Amos, and remember, it was 12:45 in the morning. And Dr. Amos answered on the first ring. He told Laurel that she had left his home around 8:30 p.m. after someone arrived to pick her up. He just had assumed it had been Laurel. He didn't get a good look at the car. He just noticed that Clea had left through the garage, and there had been a waiting car outside. Laurel was worried, but thought maybe she was with a friend. Even though that wasn't necessarily normal, nothing else really made sense. The next morning, Clea's younger brother, who went to the same high school as her, said he would make sure that Clea was at school. Clea never missed school, so they expected her to be there, even if she had spent the night with a friend. When her brother arrived at school, he immediately noticed that she wasn't there. But he learned that that morning, the senior members of the band were going to be performing at the elementary school. So he waited until lunchtime and tried to track Clea down there. When he realized that Clea was not in school, he called his mom, who immediately called the police. Unfortunately, the police told her there was nothing they could do until Clea was missing for at least 24 hours. This was back in 1994, and I want to remind everyone that this is not true. If someone you know goes missing, you can and should alert the police right away. The family organized their own search, looking through the streets and the wooded areas of Pine Bluff, specifically areas near Dr. Amos's house. They also started putting up missing posters all throughout town. This was very out of character for Clea, so everyone that knew her was quite worried about her. The following day, the police finally took an interest in her case, but at first, they still thought she had likely just run away, and she was 18 years old, so technically was a legal adult and allowed to do just that. On May 12, 1994, Dr. Amos called Laurel to ask if Clea had come home yet, and she, of course, told him no. Shortly after that call, Dr. Amos left for a business trip in the Dallas, Texas area where he stayed for 3 days. When he returned, the police went to question him, and at first he was very cooperative. He agreed, actually, to let the police search his house. However, Soon after he agreed, he got into an argument with an officer and stopped cooperating. He also would file a complaint against this particular officer for harassment. It was learned that Dr. Amos had another person working at the home that evening in addition to Clea. And this person told investigators that they saw Clea leave the home around 8:30 p.m. on foot. They thought she was just walking home. And although she usually did get a ride, her home wasn't too awfully far away from Dr. Amos's, so they just figured she was going to walk it. This, of course, contradicts what Dr. Amos said. But both of them said they saw her leave the house that night around 8:30 p.m., which is exactly when she told her mom she would likely be done working and ready to go. But it would be 2 weeks after Clea went missing before police would obtain a warrant to search Dr. Amos's home office. They executed the warrant, but they found nothing. Laurel was very upset with the police, thinking that the 2-week delay would have given Dr. Amos ample time to clean up any type of crime scene. Police began to change their theory from a runaway to a kidnapping. The more they looked into Clea's life and her family, they realized she wasn't the type of kid to just take off, especially when she had so much going for her and her future. The police were now leaning towards the story that she left the home on foot and was kidnapped while walking home. Some odd things were starting to happen involving Dr. Amos, however. Shortly after Clea's disappearance, he had begun doing some home renovations, and he did start cooperating again with law enforcement, although he did refuse to take a polygraph. It also came out that Dr. Amos was a little bit of a shady businessman, often hiring people to do some work for him, then refusing to pay them, claiming he didn't like the work they performed. It also came out that he was paying Clea less than minimum wage, but she hadn't minded because he was flexible with her school hours. Laurel and Willie also decided to do some research on their own on Dr. Amos, and they tracked down his ex-wife and asked if she would meet with them. She agreed. The three met at a restaurant, and immediately Laurel was uneasy because she had noticed a man watching them from across the street. The ex-wife told Laurel that she had hired him because she wanted to make sure this wasn't a setup. She also said she was fearful of Dr. Larry Amos, her ex-husband. She told them that he was often violent with her, and when she finally got the nerve and strength to finally leave him, he didn't give her a dime of child support. And she had recently filed for support and was afraid of retaliation. When Laurel went to the police with this information, they told her not to listen to her, that she was just a bitter ex-wife. Dr. Amos remained a person of interest since he was the last person to see her. However, there was never any evidence that pointed to him as a suspect. Police also investigated a boy that Clea was friends with. Their thought was that maybe he was the one who had picked her up that night, and he was questioned and he did agree to take a polygraph. However, those results were labeled as inconclusive. This boy also was named a person of interest, but was never publicly identified. Police have also come out and said that there is no hard evidence pointing to this young man as a suspect either. So what are the theories in this case? Theory number 1. Dr. Amos did something to Clea, meaning Clea met with foul play at the hands of Dr. Amos. This is what a lot of people believe. He was the last person to see her. But police have never been able to find anything to lead them to consider him a formal suspect. A few oddities that stand out with Dr. Amos. Why did he answer the phone on the first ring at 12:45 a.m.? Did he just happen to be sitting in his office still at that time? He told police he was awake watching TV in the next room, but Laurel still questions how he got to the phone so quickly. The timing of the home renovations is suspect also. In 2012, when Clea's case was featured on TV, one of the workers that had worked on the renovations reached out to police and stated that they had filled a hole in Dr. Amos's backyard with concrete, and he said there had been a horrible odor in his backyard. Police did conduct searches at the home a few times, even one time bringing in cadaver dogs. Some reports indicated that they hit on something, and other reports say they didn't hit on anything. So I really can't be 100% sure to tell you what happened with those cadaver dogs. There's also the rumors of his strange work activities and possibly some illegal stuff going on with his business. Did Clea perhaps pick up on some of that and question him about it? And while Dr. Amos remains a person of interest, there hasn't been anything to push him into being a full-blown suspect. Theory number 2. Clea was picked up by someone she knew, and they are responsible for what happened to her. We can't really justify the two different stories about how Clea left the house in a car or on foot, and if she did leave and get into someone else's car, whose was it? It's really too bad that this was in 1994, well before Ring doorbells were even a thing. Was it possibly this boy that police have identified as a possible person of interest? He had driven her to work at Dr. Amos's house before. And Dr. Amos apparently wasn't happy about the fact that this young man would bring Clea to work. In fact, he told Clea that he didn't approve of courting on his property, which just seems like a really weird thing to say. Maybe it wasn't this particular boy that picked her up, but maybe somebody else that she knew. Maybe someone else she had been talking to. Maybe this is why she called her mom to let her know she would be running late that night. Theory number 3. A kidnapping. Did Clea end up walking home after all, as the other employee at Dr. Amos's had said? Maybe this was a crime of opportunity. The only question I have about this is her mother had come out and said that every once in a while Clea would walk home. However, when she did this, she would let her mom know, and one of Clea's brothers would walk over to Dr. Amos's house and walk her home. She had never, ever walked home alone. I'm also curious if this other employee there that night has been questioned. It's quite odd that both they and Dr. Amos have different stories about how Clea left. So what do you think happened to 18-year-old Clea Hall? Clea is described as African American, 5 foot 8 inches tall, and weighing about 120 pounds at the time she disappeared. She was wearing her hair in a short ponytail the day she was last seen. She had also been wearing a white shirt and shorts set with polka dots on one side and stripes on another. She had on white socks and white sneakers. She did not have a cell phone, her purse, or any other personal belongings with her that night. She was last seen at the home of Dr. Amos in Pine Bluff, Arkansas on Fawcett Road. If you have any information on the whereabouts of Clea Hall, please contact the Pine Bluff Police Department at 870-543-5111. Thank you so much for listening to Clea's story. This one is certainly a tragic one, and it seems so much more could have been done for this missing girl. I will continue to share her story, and I encourage you all to do the same. It's been 28 years. The family has waited way too long for closure and answers. We will be back again next week with a regularly scheduled episode. And until then, stay safe and hug your loved ones.